Their story makes me look at the world differently. It reminds me that with enough leadership and action, anything is possible. When I see a sidewalk ramp or watch a bus being lowered for someone in a wheelchair, I feel incredible gratitude that I do not face such challenges. I'm reminded of the simple freedoms I take for granted in my everyday life. Because for some, those freedoms were not always there. The movement for disability rights reminds us that for so many disadvantaged groups, it took decades to change the world to make it their world. The movement is remembered through the actions of hundreds of disabled Americans. They organized under the leadership of the American Coalition of Civilians with Disabilities and protested throughout the United States in April of 1977. They were protesting the government's failure to implement Section 504 of the 1973 Rehabilitation Act. The failure to draft and implement Section 504 meant that thousands of buildings and public spaces remained inaccessible to disabled Americans. Protests began in Washington, D.C. to confront officials from the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare and lasted 28 hours. But in San Francisco, protesters went on to occupy the federal building for 25 days. They refused to leave until regulations were signed to implement Section 504. The occupation compromised the most significant collective organization among the disabled community for rights in the United States. They sat outside offices for days and slept on floors, often with medical equipment by their side. They climbed stairs and navigated bathrooms that were unequipped for wheelchairs. They risked their bodies and health to be heard. As these images of the community protesting for their own rights reached the public, it became apparent that no physical limitation was going to stop them. The sit-in provided much-needed pressure as leaders of the movement testified before Congress. On April 28th, a press conference was called that announced the signing of regulation for Section 504. This victory meant that thousands of facilities would finally be changed to accommodate the handicapped community. The successes of the sit-ins was a huge moment in the fight for disabled rights and paved the way for legislation that came in the following years. Yet the struggle of the community is never ending. They will always face misconceptions in society. They will always have obstacles to overcome. Even with all of their successes, there is still progress to be made.